The whole class laughed. Not because he told a joke, not because he did anything wrong, but because the teacher decided he was the joke. In front of 30 students, a black boy sat frozen at his desk while his intelligence was questioned, his background mocked, his future reduced to a stereotype. The words weren't loud, but they were sharp enough to cut deep, and no one stepped in. What the teacher didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that someone powerful was about to walk through that classroom door. And when he did, the laughter would stop. The real question is, what happens when the person you belittle isn't as powerless as you assumed? Marcus Hill was 12 years old, quiet by nature and observant in ways most adults never noticed. He sat in the front row not because he had to, but because he wanted to understand everything. Numbers made sense to him. History fascinated him. He carried his notebooks home like they were trophies, carefully stacked on the small desk in his room every afternoon. At home, life was structured and disciplined. His father believed in order, in respect, in earning your place through hard work. Marcus grew up hearing that character mattered more than noise. So he stayed focused. He kept his head down. He let his grades speak for him. At school, though, things felt different. Subtle at first. The way some classmates assumed he was on a sports scholarship program that didn't even exist. The way certain teachers seemed surprised when he scored the highest on a test. Compliments that felt less like praise and more like disbelief. Still, Marcus told himself it didn't matter. He just needed to work harder. Be sharper. Prove them wrong quietly. That morning started like any other. Backpack over his shoulder. Homework finished. Mind ready for class. He had no idea that by lunchtime, he wouldn't just be proving himself academically. He would be fighting to protect something much bigger, his dignity. It started with a question Marcus already knew the answer to. The teacher called on him without warning, chalk still in hand, eyes narrowed in a way that didn't feel curious. It felt testing. Marcus answered carefully, confidently. The room went quiet for half a second. Then came the sigh. A slow, exaggerated sigh. The teacher repeated his answer back in a tone that twisted it, making it sound foolish. A few students laughed. Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck but kept his posture straight. He had learned early that reactions were sometimes used as proof. Proof of attitude. Proof of aggression. Proof of something he didn't want labeled on him. The teacher moved closer to his desk. Asked if he was sure he understood the material. Suggested maybe he was guessing. Suggested maybe he was good at sports instead. The words weren't shouted, but they carried, each one landing harder than the last. More laughter. Louder this time. Marcus glanced around the room. Some students avoided eye contact. Others watched him like this was entertainment. His fingers tightened around his pencil. He wanted to disappear, but he also wanted to stand up, to say something, to defend himself. But he stayed quiet, because he knew how quickly quiet black boys could become disruptive. The teacher wasn't finished. Papers were lifted from Marcus's desk. His recent test score, one of the highest in the class, was mentioned with a raised eyebrow. The implication hung in the air. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was help from someone else. Maybe it wasn't earned. That was the moment something shifted. Marcus felt it in his chest. Not anger exactly. Something heavier. The realization that no matter how hard he worked, it might never be enough to change what some people had already decided about him. The classroom felt smaller by the second. The walls closer. The laughter sharper. And then the teacher made one final remark, about expectations, about knowing where students come from, about not aiming too high. It was subtle enough to deny, clear enough to wound. The bell hadn't rung yet. No one moved. Marcus stared at his desk, fighting the pressure building behind his eyes. He refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. What no one noticed was the sound of heavy footsteps approaching the hallway outside. Slow. Deliberate. And in just a few seconds, the classroom door would open. The door opened slowly. The laughter died first. Then the whispering. Then even the teacher's voice seemed to vanish mid-breath. Standing in the doorway was a man in full military dress uniform, posture straight as steel, chest lined with ribbons and stars that caught the classroom light. His presence alone changed the air. Not loud, not aggressive, just undeniable. Marcus didn't turn at first. He thought it was another administrator, another adult about to reinforce what had just happened. But then he heard the silence. The kind of silence that only comes when power walks into a room. He looked up and saw his father. 4 silver stars rested on his shoulders. His expression wasn't explosive. It was controlled, measured, the kind of calm that comes from someone who commands thousands, but now stood focused on one classroom, on one moment, on one boy sitting at his desk, fighting tears he refused to let fall. The teacher straightened immediately. Words stumbled over each other. The confidence from minutes ago evaporated like it had never existed. Marcus felt something shift inside him, not pride, not relief exactly, but validation. Proof that what had just happened was real, that it wasn't in his head, that someone powerful enough to be heard had witnessed the aftermath. His father's eyes moved from him, to the teacher, to the rest of the class. No yelling, no threats, just a long, deliberate silence that said more than any speech ever could. Because in that moment, the balance of power flipped, and the man who had made a child feel small now understood exactly who that child belonged to. But the real impact of that silence was only just beginning. The meeting that followed was quiet, but it was not small. By the end of the day, apologies were offered, explanations were given, policies were mentioned. The teacher's tone had completely changed, now careful, measured, almost rehearsed. The laughter from earlier was gone, replaced with uneasy glances and lowered eyes. But for Marcus, the damage had already happened. He walked out of that classroom taller, but not untouched. He had seen how quickly intelligence could be questioned, how easily confidence could be chipped away, and how silence from others could feel just as loud as the insult itself. His father didn't lecture him on the way home, didn't turn it into a dramatic speech. He simply reminded Marcus of something he had always known: never let someone else's small vision define your future. In the weeks that followed, the classroom felt different, softer, more cautious, but Marcus understood something deeper now. Respect that only appears when power walks into the room isn't real respect. It's fear, and that's the part that stays with him. Because not every child has a 4-star general walking through the door. Not every student has someone powerful enough to force accountability. Many sit in silence. Many internalize the doubt. Many start to believe the lie. This wasn't just a story about one classroom. It was about how quickly bias can surface and how deeply it can wound. The real question is this: if power hadn't entered that room, would anyone have listened at all? And how many children are still waiting for someone to walk through their door?